This episode on Pop Pedagogy.
Essentially, the Scholomance is like a magical algorithm that's been set up.
It's like I could die. Like there are monsters trying to kill me. Who designed this?
She gets a spell that like burns everything to the ground.
Right. For it, yeah.
So the algorithm, the way that it's set up, actually doesn't work for her. It's not.
There's no one like supervising the operations. No, there are no adults.
Class dismissed.
Remember how scary your first days at school were, so I'd like you to be especially nice to Matilda.
Captain, my captain. Sit down, Mr. Anderson.
Are you going to teach us anything, or are we just going to sit here?
Welcome to Pop Pedagogy. Hey, Melissa.
Hey, Nichole. How's it going?
It's good. What are you snacking on today?
Nothing really. I woke up just craving coffee, but I have some really good coffee from the Peruvian rainforest right now. So I'm quite happy.
I'm also drinking Peruvian coffee.
Yay.
The blue one. The blue one that you showed me at the store.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I still have the other two that I bought that I haven't ground up and used yet. It's like when something's too precious to use it, but then you still have to use it at some point, you know?
I know the feeling, yes.
Yeah. Well, today we are talking about a book.
Yes.
Yes.
To close off the season, right? Like this is the last episode, like content episode.
Yeah, this is the last episode of season 1 of our reviews, and then we'll do one episode of kind of what did we learn from the movies and books we reviewed this season, and then we'll take a little break and find out what our audience wants to see for season 2.
Very cool.
So Nichole, you're the host for the day. Do you want to share a little bit about why you chose this book? What happens in it?
Yeah, so I chose the book A Deadly Education, which is about a school called the Scholomance for young wizards or magical children. I don't think they have a name. I don't remember if they call themselves anything. People who can do magic, I guess. I don't think they call themselves witches.
No, they just have names for like the bad things.
They're
right?
like, they have like the malfeasors, which are anyway. We'll get into that, but yeah. So in A Deadly Education, there's a character called Galadriel, or Elle for short, and she goes to this school called the Scholomance, which all wizard children hope to go to because the world is so dangerous that to not be in the Scholomance is almost certainly death. But to be in the Scholomance is also very harrowing and dangerous. And I thought it would be an interesting piece of media for us to look at, because the Scholomance doesn't have any teachers. It doesn't have like anyone really running the school. It's all kind of been set up in advance. And I thought it was kind of a good analogy or comparison to use for potentially what AI could become. Essentially, the Scholomance is like a magical algorithm that's been set up like more than 100 years before the start of the story. And the way they learn in the Scholomance is, I find it very interesting to kind of look at how they've set up different types of lessons, and especially the matriculation, because the graduation, as they call it, is literally like fighting for your life to get out of the school. So everything you learn in the school is setting you up to like try to survive the graduation, which is pretty good intrinsic motivation. Even though in terms of like cognitive ability, being scared for your life 100% of the time is probably not great for learning.
It blocks things in your brain. Yeah. Like
So
these kids were under like not just like a stress of, oh shoot, I could lose the year or whatever. It's like I could die. Like there are monsters trying to kill me. Who designed this?
yeah. But the thing is, like, for them, the school is 100 times safer than to be out in the world because the monsters are so attracted to like young wizards, I guess. Maybe they call themselves wizards, but the monsters are so, to them they're like delicious candy, whereas like adult wizards are delicious candy and like a rawhide coating, so they really go after the kids. And I don't know. They talk about statistics in the book about like how many survive outside versus inside, and it's much better to be inside.
Yeah.
People fight for spots to be in the Scholomance. So yeah, it's a really interesting kind of look at a lot of different educational concepts. I think like one, like rote learning, and or like how learning is set up when there are no facilitators available, let's say. Um, and also boarding school kind of situation.
Mm.
There's a lot of internal politics inside the school that, you know, um, contributes to how well you do and how you survive, essentially. And yeah, and also, you know, the the final graduation and the kind of experiential learning of
The
preparing to
final
like fight
test.
monsters. um,
Final assignment.
the final assignment. So yeah, I thought it would be an interesting, also kind of comparison too, because our first episode was on a magical school, and now our last
True.
episode is on a magical school.
True. That's true. And they are absolutely different. Because, like, I think that the first thing that came to my mind when I was reading it was like, well, like, where are the adults? Like you said, like it's set up. It works like they set up this algorithm. The school runs by itself. It just the kids just show up and then never leave, like until their final assignment. But there's no one like supervising the operations. No, there are no adults that come to check in every now and then, like, oh, could we, like, there's all of these things that are broken, could we fix them? Should they be fixed? Because yeah, the curriculum is very much built, it seemed like, based on real life situations, like very 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 contextual, very relevant to the kind of world in that book. But still, like, it was really like, it gave me a sense of, and this is like young adult kind of literature, but
Yeah.
I got really into it, and it gave me a sense of like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die, these characters could die any moment, I cannot get
Yeah.
invested, like, no, this is gonna end up in everybody just like mutilated, um but yeah, but it was so interesting to keep like reading through the way that they received knowledge, received content, the kind of assignments that they had to comply, and seeing like in the middle of that isolationism kind of that happens for survival, or the cliques for survival, like, yeah, like there this kind of sense of community that appears in different ways, right?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that our main character, Elle, um, she is someone that everyone doesn't like. So she doesn't have a clique. She has literally no one. She knows she's on her own because it's been like that her whole life. There's just something about her that turns people off. Um, and she thinks it's because in this world, like magic always has a kind of price or a kind of balance, I guess. And her mom is like a saint, essentially.
Yeah, like a
And
good witch.
she can heal, and she's so good that Elle thinks she's the balance to her mom. And her dad also like sacrificed himself to save her mom, which was like such an act of, love, that she thinks that, the reason she is this way, that everyone's just immediately like repulsed by her, is because it's like a balance to how good her parents were. And later, I mean, this is the first book of three, and it's when I was like trying to go back over the plot, I'm like, this book isn't super plot heavy because it has to set up the world. So it spends a lot of time just
Right.
explaining. It's a lot of exposition. And the plot gets, there's a lot more action and a lot more plot in book two and book three. And so you learn a bit more later on about why things are the way they are. But in this book, we just learn a lot about how the school works and how one of the things I wrote down is, for a magic school, learning in the classroom is very rote, and it's the hidden curriculum that is actually teaching them how to survive. So, like, a monster suddenly attacking you as you like get your rice from the cafeteria line is not part of the curriculum, but it's something that's just
Mhm.
happening all the time. It's like the hidden curriculum concept, and also how the students interact with each other. And I think it's really interesting to watch Elle's journey in this book because I think the main plot is her going from being isolated and in her own mind uncared for and unloved to having like three good friends at the end who are like watching her back and like her stepping into more of a leadership role. Um, I mean, there's a lot. I'm trying to succinctly summarize all of the concepts of this book, but that are important to the conversation. Um, but I think like one of the concepts that's really important to the conversation is how important it is to have a learning community in this school that share. You watch each other's back for one. You also help each other out because you can't really do what you need to do alone.
Mhm.
And at the beginning, she doesn't have that, and by the end, she does.
And at the beginning, she doesn't want it either. Like
That's
she's
true.
wary of everyone around her because the environment has shown her that like she cannot trust people. She that even also that idea of self that she has, that she is bad, that she has this destructive power as well, makes her very ultra conscious of how she spends her energy. And even there are some moments where she describes kind of like the future that she sees for herself, right? Like there, somebody with my characteristics, like a Maleficer, is going to become either this soul absorbing demon and assassin, or it could happen this way. Like there are three kind of alternatives that she sees for her future. And that was very interesting to see as well, how like the outside world or the notions that she has of who she is and what she's able to do limit kind of the performance that she has in the school and the connections that she
Yeah.
makes. And also that idea in the book that everybody has kind of like an inclination, right?
Yeah,
Like
the
these kind of
affinity.
abilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, like these kind of abilities that you're naturally good at. And then you decide on your like curriculum, right? Your learning pathway, like according to that, because then you play to your abilities. um yeah, that was super interesting as well. And I think like there are some currents of thought that align with that, in the sense that yeah, like you have some innate abilities and it's natural to play to that, right? Like why not?
Yeah, it's like I mean, it's a cliche quote, and I think it's attributed to Einstein, but I don't think that's who actually said it. But like, if you teach a bird, or if you try to teach a fish to climb a tree, something,
Right, he's
you know
gonna
what I'm talking
yeah.
about?
Yeah,
Like, you
yeah, yeah,
can't
like
judge
the
a
way that
fish
you
by its
judge
ability to like climb a
intelligence.
tree or something like that.
Yeah, 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 like yeah, everything. Yeah, something like everybody has a talent, but if you judge a fish for its ability to
Then
climb a
it's gonna
tree.
spend its whole life thinking it's stupid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and in the book, everyone has this affinity, and in the school, there's only three tracks that you can go to. You can do incantations, artifice. There's one more. I forget the other one. And then there's these kind of like unofficial tracks, which are you can be basically like a servant to the rich kids, and then they help you survive. So it's like
But
it's
you
kind
have
of
like
a
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, like in exchange of protection, right? Because
yeah,
that is
kind of.
also like something. Oh yeah, that is also something that I thought was interesting. How Elle is already like plotting, not plotting, but she's already thinking about what happens in the outside world in that sense as well. Like thinking about a community as something that an enclave,
Yeah,
enclave.
I think it's enclave. Yeah, like
enclave.
to be in an enclave in the real world, it keeps you safe because it's kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
like
yeah.
a protected place. And
Hmm.
her mom has rejected the enclaves because she's just against everything they stand for, which is
Hmm.
like a metaphor for like the real world and like the 1%, right? How they protect themselves and everyone else suffers as a result. And so her mom has like completely rejected that, but she's like, I just want to be safe. And I just want to be like taken care of, and I'm going to go to an enclave. And so her whole kind of strategy for getting out of the Scholomance is to prove herself to get accepted into an enclave because she knows she
Hmm.
has this great power. And I think like circling back to what you were saying about the affinities and how the school caters to those, it's part of its algorithm, right? Its magical algorithm, in that it will give you spells based on your affinity, and it just inherently
Hmm.
knows each kid's affinity. But because Elle has this affinity for destruction, her affinity is mass destruction. That's literally what it is. Like great cataclysmic destruction is her affinity. So when she asks for a spell for like cleaning her room, she gets a spell that like burns everything to the ground.
Right. So just might as well just go for it. Yeah.
So the algorithm, the
Um,
way that it's set up actually doesn't work for her. It's not actually helping her learn what she needs to know because it's catering too much to her affinity. And I think this is one of the things you can think about as like a comparison to AI, in that there is there isn't an ability for the algorithm to have nuance and to like
right.
change something based on the context of the situation. At least in
Yeah.
this
Or put
moment, I
limits
think.
to it,
Yeah. Yeah, so I
you
wonder, like,
know?
how you felt about, the way the classroom kind of dynamics were set up without any kind of facilitators involved.
I mean, yeah, I think we were talking about it yesterday, but like to me that the way that the school presents, the spells that it thinks that you're going to need and stuff like that, like you described, it just sounds super similar to a broken algorithm, right? Like maybe they designed it so, oh yeah, it makes more sense for people to, play to their strengths. So send them, spells that correspond to that. But it's too literal in the sense that, maybe if there was an adult involved and they could vet like, oh, this girl kind of blows things up very easily, maybe like let's just do a different type of curation of the content that she receives, right, based on
Yeah.
her age or whatever, because there's like they go through like 5 years of school or something like that, but like quite a few
Uh,
years of school, you
yeah.
know yeah. And then she also mentions about how she's on this track where it's helpful for her to learn languages because the
Mhm.
languages open up the possibilities to getting different spells, and more coveted ones that she can later exchange for other things and stuff. But because she's studying like this language and she doesn't know it very well yet, but the algorithm school doesn't know it, the school will still like send her spells in any of the languages
Yeah.
that she's learning, like no matter what her experience or competency in those languages is as well, which I thought was really cool because yes, it's true, languages like that. I think that idea or that uh, that fact, right, that languages are not just like a translation of things, but they open you up to new knowledge, new ways of interacting with your surrounded. I really appreciated that as an English
Yeah,
teacher.
yeah.
But yeah, again, that lack of nuance about what is actually needed by these human students at this moment in their development, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that I mean, I have a big problem with how they teach languages. Scholomance, maybe you as a language instructor can share your feelings on this, but like basically how you learn languages is you go to the language lab, you sit in a booth, and the booth will whisper to you
Yeah.
in that language. But because of her affinity, it whispers horrible things to her the whole time she's
Right.
in the booth. And you
See?
just sit there and you do like exercise worksheets while it whispers to you. I'm like, what language like pedagogy is this? Because the only way I ever learned languages Like, honestly, when I was learning Chinese, the basics, okay, like, class was helpful, but once I got past the basics and I was, like, intermediate, like, class did nothing for me. I learned by just skipping class and going because I lived in China, so I skipped class a lot, and I would just go to, like, the market and hang out with old ladies, and I'd just be like, "What is this? How do you say this?" And I would just talk to
Right.
people. And that's, like, the best way to learn is immersion, and also when I was, a language teacher, I worked in a school, well, in China, they call them cram schools. So I worked in they're kinda like after school or, but a lot of the ones I worked at were for little kids, but one of the ones I worked at was so cool because it had all these different rooms that were set up to immerse you in a experience, and like, there was a grocery
Oh,
store, and there
right.
were, like, plastic apples and bananas, and so you had to have the kids go in there and buy
I love
groceries.
that.
Yeah, it was so nice, and there was, like, an airplane, and there was I don't know, there was, like, a lot of different ones. You really learn is, like, immersing yourself, like, talking to people, being able to use the language in context, but the way the school teaches languages is, like, completely removed from context, but at the same time, they're not really learning languages to use them, they're just learning them to cast spells, so, you
Mhm.
know
So it makes some sense. But also I think what you described about, that basically they sit each, on their own, studying their own thing, their own assignment and everything. That happens for all of the assignments that they have, right?
Yeah, they have
Like
I
I don't
mean, they have to ask
remember.
each other for help sometimes,
Right.
like,
But
especially
it's
I think
not
in
like
artifice. Yeah.
yeah, but it's not like a group project. It's more
No,
like I
the
need to
the
make this
school doesn't give
happen
them
and I
group
don't know how to
assignments.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like that just also makes me think about, like connecting it to AI, one of the main uses is for each student to have a tutor. And I think I remember there was a conference that we went to like a few years ago, and somebody asked you, like, but like, isn't personalized AI tutoring better for kids and it's going to make teachers obsolete at one point, like what's the point of teachers in classrooms if every student should could have a very personalized
I'm sure like,
experience.
when people start making that argument, my face will probably get so red, it makes me
No,
so
yeah, and
angry.
you were like, no, absolutely not. I don't agree. Like, no, we'll
I
always
think
need
that
teachers.
was that when we were giving the talk on, like, ethics and AI for, like
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It was like 2019. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, at that conference, that was Mobile Learning Week, and I think one of the themes was AI of that conference, and that's why we were giving a
Hmm.
talk on, like, the ethics of AI, and basically, the main argument is that the algorithm is always going to be biased because the humans that make it are biased, and,
Of course.
there's some things that our organization was doing to try to counteract that bias in the bots and things that we were using. But essentially, there always needs to be a human double checking. There needs to be
Hmm.
like communities involved in understanding and deciding what those algorithms look like.
Yeah.
And the Scholomance, I mean, by the time of the book, the algorithms were created more than 100 years before. So they're probably,
Right. So see, yeah,
yeah,
totally. I thought it was like a total allegory of, like 100 years into the future, if we trust everything on, AI and one algorithm that a very limited group of people decided that is how things should run because it makes more sense. It's it, like people could
yeah.
die,
And it's
basically.
not that it's not good for some things. And I actually wrote an article when I think it was like right when ChatGPT was launched. And I was in
Yeah.
South Africa at the time. So it must have been 2022, early 2022. I wrote an article about the way people were talking about it back then, and I think still to now, was that, oh, kids are just going to use this to cheat, and like it's really bad, and
Yeah.
teachers are really upset about it, and all this kind of stuff. And I said basically, like, if the students are using it to cheat on the assignment, the problem is probably the assignment.
Right. Yeah, and I think that that is kind of like the consensus that we are finding around AI, right? Like we cannot avoid it, but we can help students find ways to use it to enhance their knowledge, their learning process instead of hindering it, right?
Yeah.
And it starts with also like, being able to provide teachers with meaningful training and training that is empowering as well, that is
Yeah.
not just like passively using the tools or replacing things that already exist with tools that might not be optimal in the end of the day, because the context is not enabling that potential that much.
Yeah.
um yeah, it's so interesting how that conversation has changed, and it's so interesting to connect it to magic as well, because
I
this is
mean,
out of all of the
it
movies.
scratches all the itches, right? Like the AI itch, like the magic school itch, the like novel itch,
Yeah.
or
And
the first romance itch, because there's like a little romance in the book too.
oh,
So
of course there is, because this is
yeah,
like young adult. There's always going to be a romance, I feel, or
yeah,
very, or not, maybe not a romance, but yeah, like that
yeah.
human romantic connection
Oh,
element,
yeah,
or
it's
yeah,
so good.
of course.
Before
But
circling back
yeah,
to like
I've been enjoying
the
it.
book plot specifically, I just wanted to mention on the topic of AI and teachers that UNESCO, I think, like in the last couple of weeks, just released the AI competency framework for teachers,
Mhm.
and that's a really good resource. So for listeners who are interested, you can find that probably on we can put a link, but yeah, the UNESCO, their competency frameworks are like they're meant for a global audience, so you always have
Mhm.
to think about them in context, but it could be a very useful starting place for looking at a framework for teacher training and whatnot. And I wonder if it would be if something like that would have been useful for like setting up a school like the Scholomance, because I feel like the people who set it up were not teachers. I mean, they were parents, really, I guess, that just wanted to keep their kids safe. So, and they were
Right. There
probably
were good intentions.
yeah, but the pedagogy behind the way that they learn, it ends up working out because of the hidden curriculum, because of the ways the students work around the way that it's been set up. It reminds me a little bit of Sugata Mitra and the school in the cloud. Like he just put these computers like out
Yes,
into the
yes,
like he just would put
exactly.
it, and he would just like the
They'll
kids would be
figure
like,
it
"What is
out.
this?" And he'd just be like, "Use it however you want, use it." And they
Yeah,
ended up
yeah, yeah.
teaching each other and like, figuring it out together. And it's kind of like that. It's like you can set something up, but at the end of the day, I don't think they did any research on which kids excelled and which ones didn't and why. He was just like, oh, like some of the kids learned even without any teachers involved whatsoever. But even Sugata Mitra like
Mhm.
advocates for facilitation. Like, not that the teacher needs to be at the front lecturing, but that they need to be helping the kids learn from each other and from the curriculum.
Yeah, at least some cycles of monitoring and evaluation, right? Or just
Mm.
like some reflection cycles within every, I don't know, every decade would be nice for the for this school.
Yeah, and
But yeah.
the other thing that about the way the Scholomance is set up is the things that I think that are good is that even within its automation, there's differentiation. But like we said in the beginning, like the differentiation isn't nuanced enough to deal with special cases like L. Like if you're a normal kid who's got an affinity for like, I don't know, building stuff, I think you're probably okay. But if you have an affinity for mass destruction, then you know you're kind of
Yeah,
out of
what do
luck.
you do with that? Yeah, you probably don't want to super strengthen that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it was interesting to close the season with a book that had no teachers in it at all.
Yeah, well, I think
You
it's
know?
interesting to look at like the institutions and the teachers and the admins, and maybe
Yeah, the
eventually
whole
we'll do like
system.
Dumbledore as an admin. um or like Mr. Feeney, the principal of the school in Boy Meets World. I think he's a really interesting educator to look at. But in this case, it's the school that is the character and is the educator and is the
Mhm.
only facilitator of learning. So, Melissa, do you think, usually at the end of the episode, we ask is the teacher a good teacher? Will we give them gold star or demerit or keep trying? So, what do you think? Is the Scholomance a good school?
Oh my god. I mean, I wanna say keep trying because of the context, right? Like the world building in this book is scary. Like it's either you get eaten alive outside or you get a little bit more of a chance of fighting for your survival within the school. So in that sense, I think the school is definitely like a good thing, for the kids.
Yeah.
Curriculum is very much built, and the hidden curriculum is built to 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 enhance those survival skills that they're going to need in the outside world, I guess. So the schoolwork has kind of real impact and relevant impact. But yeah, somebody needs to go and check the algorithms for sure.
Yeah, we'll wait till book 2 to find out what happens to the Scholomance. I think this
What
is
do you
like the
think?
first episode where we didn't reveal any spoilers. I don't think we revealed any spoilers in this episode. So, um, listeners, you can go read it, and we won't have spoiled anything. And
Yeah, no, it's a good story anyway.
yeah, and you can, ask yourself the question: is the Scholomance a good school? Um, I think
But what did you think, Nicole?
yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a keep trying. I think it tries. I think it tries to be a good school. And I think it's a little bit, it's yeah, it needs maintenance and updates. um, and I think ideally it would be better, with some facilitation of some kind. I mean,
Mm.
this is a modern, well, okay. I mean, this is just me getting into the weeds of asking too many questions of like a fantasy story. But in theory, these kids live in the real world, right? Like the
Right.
modern day world. They have phones and stuff. And so I'm like, why can't they zoom in some facilities? Like maybe it's not safe for the adults to be in the school, but like couldn't they zoom in?
But you forget the school is built in like
In
this
the
black
abyss or
hole.
whatever. Yeah.
Right, yeah, in like
Yeah.
the void, so
Yeah.
I guess like there's no good reception in the void.
I would like the author Naomi Novik to chime in on this conversation. Like, is that why the teachers can't zoom in? Is because the school's built in the void? Let us know. But yeah, I will also give the Scholomance a keep trying because it does fulfill its purpose in its
Mhm.
in its way. It does, reduce wizard children deaths by a large percentage. But as a learning facility, I think it can do a lot better. So keep trying, Scholomance. But we are like also things happen and maybe we can circle back after you've read book 3
Yes.
and do a follow-up episode on the Scholomance because things change.
Okay. I look forward to that.
All right. Well, thanks, listeners, for tuning into this episode of Pop Pedagogy. As always, you can go to the website to find the episode resources and to listen to the episode if you want on there. You can listen to Pop Pedagogy everywhere you stream your podcast. So we'll hope to see you in the next final episode where we recap season 1
Woohoo!
and ask ourselves what did we learn from the teachers and schools we reviewed in this first season, and let us know what you're looking forward to for season 2.
Yes. Any recommendations, books, movies, series that we should check out? We want to know.
Great. Well, thanks for joining me for this episode, Melissa. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Nicole. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.